All right, Jack Posobiec back here in the War Room. You're live. And I want to talk about a case that, a lot of people don't talk about it anymore. It's a case that I've talked about on social media a lot over the past couple of years. It's a case that, really captured the nation a couple of years back, but also one that people just really haven't been following. And that's the case of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. And this has gotten a lot of attention. People have been asking about it at the White House press briefings. There's been a big push from a lot of people for a federal pardon for Derek Chauvin. And there's a lot of questions that are now starting to actually come up regarding the trial itself, the original trial of Derek Chauvin several years ago now. And so one of the things that happened at that trial, which was reported on later in a documentary called The Fall of Minneapolis, and by the way, the entire state, of course, was run by the great illustrious Tim Walz at the time, was regarding the use of the neck restraint. And we all remember the video of George Floyd, remember the moment, remember how he felt. But the question was this an authorized neck restraint or not? And what the documentary The Fall of Minneapolis found was actually it was authorized at the time. Well, wait a minute. If this was authorized, then why isn't it on the police department? Why are they going after one guy? Well, we have with us the producer of that documentary. She's an investigative reporter from Alpha News based there in Minneapolis. It's Liz Collin. Liz, you've been doing the yeoman's work on this case. Tell us what you've uncovered and the roller coaster that it's been since then regarding the use of the neck restraint and the police department's testimony in Derek Chauvin's trial. Plus, by the way, a new court ruling that just happened this week.
Yeah, good to see you again, Jack. Thanks for having me on. But you're right. It seems almost every day a little bit more of the truth is coming to light in Minneapolis, and really appreciate the spotlight you've given this and given us to our work over at Alpha News. But I was with the CBS station for many, many years in Minneapolis, and left mainstream media really just to be able to tell the truth about this case. So bothered how this lie was pushed, not even throughout Minnesota, but throughout the country, and it spread across the globe, to be quite honest. Lies by so many people. And now we have Derek Chauvin, who remains in prison, serving a nearly 21-year prison sentence. Tu Tao, another former Minneapolis police officer, remains in prison. Alex King and Thomas Lane, both rookie police officers. They are out of prison at this point, but lifelong felons due to what took place that day in May of 2020. But specifically, we're focusing on Katie Blackwell. She was one of several Minneapolis police officers to take the stand in Derek Chauvin's trial. And specifically, she says during Chauvin's state trial that she does not recognize the technique that Derek Chauvin is using. We used about 30 seconds of her testimony in that documentary, The Fall of Minneapolis, which was released back in 2023. We were sued by Katie Blackwell just this past October, so nearly a year later, for the documentary and also for my book called They're Lying, The Media, the Left, and the Death of George Floyd. That's the first piece of work we put out surrounding all of this, just trying to get the truth out in any way we possibly could. And she specifically takes issue with how she's depicted on the stand. She says that she was defamed through The Fall of Minneapolis and the book. Well, just this week on Tuesday, Judge Edward Wall with Hennepin County ruled in our favor to have that lawsuit dismissed. And what's quite interesting with this, as part of our order for dismissal, we gathered dozens and dozens of police officers that called her testimony into question. They signed sworn court declarations to say this was a part of training. In fact, 14 actually used the word perjury, that Katie Blackwell, who has since been promoted twice, keep in mind, since Chauvin's trial, she's now the assistant police chief in Minneapolis, that she perjured herself during that trial. So the judge, in his 58-page order that he put out, his ruling on Tuesday, again in our favor, throwing this whole lawsuit out. Our attorney called it garbage from the very beginning. But in many ways, this is really going to mean quite a few things, I think, not only for Chauvin, but for the other three officers as well. The ruling saying things like each statement that Judge Blackwell complains about or or Blackwell that complains about is substantially true, using that language throughout this ruling. And under the facts, it is possible to interpret Blackwell's testimony as incomplete or misleading by omission. There's specifically about 10 different references to her testimony not being truthful in this order. So we do believe that perhaps more things will fall, and perhaps likely soon here with all of this, Jack.
So I want to just get this clear for the audience, that for the members of the posse that haven't been following this, and this case, took place all the way back. It was April of 2021. So I believe almost exactly, I think about it, I have to look at the date. We're almost coming up on the exact 4 years to the day since this case was decided. And so, but yeah, April 20th, 2021. And so this officer who's actually the training commander, so the person who was in charge of all the training for the Minneapolis police force, is going up there saying that she doesn't recognize the neck restraint that Derek Chauvin employs on George Floyd in this situation. And now you have all these people coming forward, current and former officers, saying that this is exactly what they were trained to do, and exactly what she personally trained them to do. And yet she goes up on the stand in this I shudder to think of a case since OJ that's more high profile than Derek Chauvin and George Floyd, and essentially says that the opposite of what the truth is, essentially just lies. And this is a massive bombshell. So she sues you and says this is defamation. None of this is true. Judge comes in and says, no, this isn't defamation. And in fact, it looks like there is a legitimate basis. And by the way, this isn't just a First Amendment thing. The judge actually comes in. Walk me through that, because I believe the phrasing was found basically this legitimate basis, significant amount of truth from your statement in the documentary.
Yeah, and this is really what's remarkable, Jack. So you have the media, no surprise, Minnesota's largest newspaper, the Star Tribune, owned and operated, I should say operated by a former commissioner of Governor Tim Walz. But they are spinning this that, this had nothing to do with the truthfulness of her testimony, sort of nothing to see here. And this is what the Minneapolis Police Department, they say that this did not question the truthfulness of her testimony. In fact, that is not true at all. In 10 different areas of this order by Judge Wallet, in fact, does exactly that. Again, using that phrase, substantial truth, the core implication of Collins' statement, it's true, whether it's the book or the documentary. So let's not only forget that all of these officers, they come forward, 34 officers in all with these signed court declarations, 14 of them saying that she perjured herself. We could have had many more officers, but at some point we didn't want to waste the court's time with too many things we were submitting in this order for dismissal. But there are also pictures of Katie Blackwell herself actually using this restraint herself during some riots that took place after a hockey game years ago that appear in a Minneapolis Police Department yearbook. We have dozens upon dozens of pictures that were submitted to us and also used in the cases of these officers, using this same restraint. But I also want to let people know that the MRT, the maximal restraint technique, which you can hear the officers talking about in the body camera footage. Again, the body camera footage is kept away from the public for at least 2.5 months. There's a reason for that we're only allowed to see that viral cell phone video from May of 2020. But all of that is kept from the public. And again, it's easy to see why. And MRT is not allowed. Judge Peter Cahill in Derek Chauvin's case does not allow the maximal restraint technique into his state trial because they say that they can't find proof that the last time MRT was taught, that he signed his name in for that training. So therefore, he did not allow MRT in trial. Again, as crazy as that sounds, but these are a lot of different tactics and techniques that I think need to be questioned. Also want to remind your audience, it's Attorney General Keith Ellison who's leading the prosecution of Derek Chauvin and these officers. And in fact, the Hennepin County Attorney's Office quickly came out and said that they did not feel comfortable charging these 3 other officers specifically after this happened. And this is when you have Governor Tim Walz come into the picture, and he takes the case away from Hennepin County and gives it to Attorney General Ellison. But you're right, we're approaching nearly 5 years now since this has all happened in May of 2020. And it is remarkable how people still to this day, that the media in Minnesota continue to cling to this narrative, to these lies. In fact, yesterday, the Star Tribune called the type of reporting I do abhorrent. And I quickly fired back saying, sorry, I do believe in facts and actually talking to the people involved. So that's what you consider abhorrent reporting in Minnesota, if you can believe it, Jack.
Imagine if we had a Liz Collin in every major city in America. What you're doing is actual, on-the-ground, hard-nosed reporting, getting the facts, talking to real people, talking to officials, talking to whistleblowers, people who want to come forward. And folks, Alpha News, I mean, you've done so much reporting on other these charity scandals and other Tim Walz and other things that have gone on in the city and in your state. And then, of course, you have this establishment media that's just so against you, because the problem is, Liz, is that you are abhorrent to their control of the narrative and their control of the truth writ large. This is why, by the way, people kept asking when Tim Walz was nominated as vice president over little Josh Shapiro, my governor in Pennsylvania. They said, well, how come all of this stuff is coming out about Tim Walz? Why hasn't the local media in Minnesota ever covered any of this stuff? Why didn't the local media tell us these basic facts that, hey, there was a case that was just found that said the judge just ruled that, in fact, there is truth to the claim that Derek Chauvin's neck restraint was, in fact, approved and authorized by the police department at the time that he used it 5 years ago. This would be massive news if we had lived in a society where the truth actually was put on the front page. But as we learned during COVID and as we learned during so many other things, that doesn't quite seem to be the case. So, Liz, what is it? Is it money? Is it power? What do you think is really driving this determination to completely control the narrative, just from your perspective?
I think especially here in Minnesota, money and power certainly plays a big role, but there is a lot of fear that permeates the air in this state. I feel like I'm from here, so I'm speaking as a native Minnesotan, but that Minnesota nice thing, that's a real thing. Nobody wants to upset the apple cart. Nobody wants to be the bad guy. Jack, I am fine being the bad guy. That's a role that I accept. But that is the problem, especially even this case, for example, it changed so many lives. Really, I think none for the better. I have yet to find anybody that thinks this was the rise of Minneapolis after these lies were told. So I think that is also part of it. We are portrayed, as a very blue state. I will tell you that is not the case. Definitely more purple than anything else, but also just a couple specks of blue, basically like many other states, right? And surrounded by a sea of red, and everything gets cast, it seems, in the political lens these days. But I really am a fact-based person. There is such thing as the truth, and there is such thing as lies. But to let people get away with what they have over the years is actually the thing that's abhorrent to me. Yeah.
It's so ridiculous. Folks, go give her a follow. Liz Collin, the great Liz Collin. They'll be naming awards after her one day. And Alpha News, the book and the documentary, The Fall of Minneapolis. We'll be right back. Jack Posobiec here, guest hosting for the great Stevie K. Bannon on The War Room.